The death of ownership and the tethered economy. Imagine you buy a high-end smartphone, a state-of-the-art tractor, or even a smart thermostat for your home. You pay the full retail price, you walk out of the store with the physical object in your hands, and you believe, quite rationally, that the object belongs to you. But in the year 2026, that belief is a legal and technological illusion. Under the current hidden systems of global commerce, you haven't actually bought a product. You have merely paid for a conditional license to use a piece of hardware that remains under the permanent, invisible control of the manufacturer. We have entered the era of the tethered economy, a world where the very concept of ownership is being systematically dismantled. To understand how we lost the right to our own possessions, we have to look back exactly 100 years. In 1924, an executive at General Motors named Alfred P. Sloan, Jr. realized that the automobile market had reached a point of saturation. People had cars that worked perfectly well, and because they worked, they weren't buying new ones. Sloan's solution was a radical strategy that would redefine the 20th century: planned obsolescence. By introducing annual model changes with minor aesthetic updates, he trained consumers to feel that their functional cars were outdated. However, the planned obsolescence of the past was limited by the laws of physics. A company could use inferior materials or fragile components to ensure a product would eventually break. But once the customer had the item, they could still take it to a local mechanic or fix it themselves with a wrench. Today, the strategy has evolved into something far more insidious: software-induced obsolescence. Modern manufacturers no longer need to wait for a part to rust or a gear to grind down. They can now reach through the internet and kill a product from thousands of miles away using a software lock or by simply choosing to end support for a device that is otherwise physically perfect. This is the kill switch business model. A clear example of this occurred in 2024 when the gaming giant Ubisoft deactivated the authentication servers for its game, The Crew. Thousands of people who had purchased the game suddenly found that it was entirely unusable, even in single-player modes, because the license to play had been revoked by a remote server.
The transition from owning to licensing has turned our homes into subscription-based environments. We are seeing a radical shift where physical products are becoming mere vessels for software services. Companies like Apple and Microsoft claim intellectual property rights over the operating systems and internal communication protocols of the devices you carry in your pocket. By integrating software so deeply into hardware, they have created a repair monopoly. This monopoly is maintained through a process called parts pairing or serialization. In this system, every component inside a device, from the screen to the battery, is given a unique digital serial number that is paired to the motherboard. If you try to replace a broken screen with a third-party part, the software detects the mismatch and disables features like biometric security or camera quality, even if the replacement part is technically identical to the original. This is not a technical necessity. It is a deliberate design choice to force consumers to either pay exorbitant fees for official repairs or, more commonly, to abandon the device and buy a new one. The economic cost of this lost autonomy is staggering. UK surveys have found that 30% of consumers discard their electronics simply because they cannot afford the official repair costs. The UN's Global E-Waste Monitor reported that in 2022, a record 62 billion kilograms of e-waste was generated worldwide, driven largely by limited repair options and the forced obsolescence of functioning hardware. We are literally burying our planet in dead technology because we are legally forbidden from bringing it back to life. But the right to repair movement isn't just about saving money on a phone screen or reducing trash in a landfill. It is a jurisprudential battle for cognitive and economic liberty. The ability to modify, repair, and truly possess our tools is inherent to the human concept of ownership that dates back to the Paleolithic age. When a company tells you that you are not allowed to open the back of your own tractor, or see the code that governs your own medical equipment, they are asserting a level of corporate sovereignty that overrides your basic property rights. We are living through a great dispossession. From the John Deere tractors that require a dealer's password to clear a simple fault code, to the Sonos speakers that were rendered inoperable by a platform migration, the message from the industry is clear. You are not an owner. You are a permanent tenant. Is this the final stage of late-stage capitalism? Or is there a way to break the digital tether and reclaim our right to own the things we buy? To find the answer, we have to look at the front lines of the revolution, from the farmers in the American Midwest to the legislators in the European Union who are currently drafting the laws of the 2026 digital deadline. The architecture of the lock and the farmers' rebellion. The most intense battleground for the right to repair didn't start in a high-tech Silicon Valley laboratory. It started in the muddy fields of the American Midwest. For generations, the American farmer was the ultimate owner-repairer, a person who could fix a broken harvester in the middle of a storm using nothing but a wrench and grit. But as agricultural equipment became smart, companies like Deere & Company performed a radical architectural pivot. They didn't just add computers to tractors, they added a digital cage. By the early 2020s, a farmer who replaced a simple sensor on their own tractor would find the machine stuck in limp mode, a software-induced state where the engine refuses to run at more than a fraction of its power. To clear the error code and authorize the repair, the farmer was forced to wait days for an official technician to drive out and enter a proprietary password. This wasn't a mechanical failure. It was a repair monopoly. The equipment manufacturers used the complexity of their software as a shield, claiming that allowing independent repair would compromise safety or environmental emissions. In reality, it was a system of exclusionary conduct designed to harvest high-margin service fees from a captive audience. The situation became so desperate that some farmers began using cracked Ukrainian firmware just to regain control over the machines they had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for. This was the first major crack in the illusion of ownership. When you can't fix your own tools, you aren't an owner, you are a dependent user. While the farmers were fighting for their tractors, the consumer electronics industry was perfecting a more subtle form of incarceration: parts pairing, also known as serial serialization. This is the digital equivalent of an organ transplant rejection. In this hidden system, every major component of a device, the screen, the battery, the camera module, is assigned a unique digital ID that must match the ID stored on the motherboard. If you take two identical brand-new iPhones and swap their original screens, both phones will disable critical features like Face ID or True Tone. The software detects a mismatch, even though the parts are genuine. Manufacturers, led by industry giants like Apple, justify this through the security narrative. They argue that pairing parts is necessary to protect user privacy and prevent the use of counterfeit components that could facilitate data theft. Most critics and independent repairers argue that this is a manufactured barrier. By controlling the authorization process, companies ensure that even a physically perfect repair is technically broken unless it is performed through an official, expensive program. This design philosophy turns the device into a black box that is intentionally hostile to its own owner. This culture of locked hardware reached a point of public absurdity with the case of the McDonald's ice cream machines. For years, customers noticed that the soft-serve machines at McDonald's were perpetually out of service. The investigation into this failure revealed a hidden ecosystem of repair restrictions. The manufacturer, Taylor Company, had designed a machine with intentional software opacity. When the machine failed, it displayed cryptic error codes that only a Taylor technician could decode using a specific diagnostic tool. When a third-party company created a device to help franchise owners understand these codes, they were met with legal threats and technical blocks. In 2024, the U.S. Copyright Office finally intervened, granting a specific exemption to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, to allow third-party repair of commercial food equipment,
proving that even a broken milkshake machine is a matter of national policy. These individual battles began to coalesce into a broader legislative war. The first shot heard round the world was the 2012 Massachusetts Automotive Right to Drive. This landmark legislation forced car manufacturers to provide independent mechanics with the same diagnostic information they gave to their authorized dealers. It was so successful that it served as the model for a national memorandum of understanding across all 50 states. Massachusetts pushed even further in 2020, passing a ballot initiative to include telematics data, the wireless data transmitted by cars, in the repair requirements. Though this was met with fierce federal opposition from agencies claiming it made vehicles vulnerable to hackers. By 2022 and 2023, the momentum became unstoppable. New York passed the Digital Fair Repair Act, the first of its kind to cover consumer electronics, though last-minute changes provided some exceptions to manufacturers. Minnesota followed with a groundbreaking law that included home appliances. California and Colorado enacted laws covering everything from powered wheelchairs to agricultural equipment. In 2026, Oregon and Colorado took the most radical step yet, banning parts pairing entirely. These laws legally forbid manufacturers from using software locks to prevent the installation of third-party or used parts. The stakes of this movement are not merely financial, they are ecological. The UN's Global E-Waste Monitor reports that we are currently generating 62 billion kilograms of e-waste every year. Only 22.3% of this is formally recycled. A major driver of this toxic mountain is the fact that 30% of consumers discard their devices simply because they cannot afford the official repair or because the software has rendered the repair impossible. We are living in a linear economy of take, make, dispose, where the manufacturer's profit is directly linked to the speed at which your device becomes trash. The first victories in the U.S. states have shown that the system can be changed. But the real test is whether these local laws can withstand the pressure of a globalized supply chain. As we look toward the July 2026 deadline, we must ask, is the right to repair just a luxury for the wealthy West? Or is it the foundation of a new, circular economy that respects both the owner and the planet? To find out, we must look across the Atlantic to the European Union, where a massive legal update is about to rewire the relationship between humans and machines forever. The Brussels Effect and the Windows 10 Standoff. While the United States fights the battle for repair state by state, creating a complex patchwork of laws from Oregon to Massachusetts, the European Union has taken a different approach. They are rewriting the rules for the entire global market. This is a phenomenon political scientists call the Brussels effect. Because the EU is such a massive and wealthy consumer market, when it passes a strict regulation, global corporations often find it cheaper to apply those standards worldwide, rather than manufacturing different, repairable versions for Europe and disposable versions for everyone else. The clock is now ticking toward a definitive historical marker. July 31st, 2026. This is the deadline for all EU member states to transpose and apply Directive EU 2024/1799. More commonly known as the Right to Repair Directive. This is not a soft recommendation or a corporate pledge. It is a binding legal mandate that creates enforceable obligations for manufacturers of everything from washing machines and vacuum cleaners to smartphones, tablets, and servers. The first pillar of this European revolution is the direct obligation to repair. Under the new law, manufacturers cannot simply tell you that your device is unsupported. For a specific list of products known as Annex 2, companies are legally required to offer repair services within a reasonable time and, crucially, for a reasonable price. For years, the industry's secret weapon was the deterrent price, setting the cost of a replacement screen or battery so high that it felt irrational not to just buy a brand new model. The EU is now intervening in this math, prohibiting prices that effectively discourage repair.
But the most operationally significant aspect of the directive, the part that has sent shockwaves through corporate legal departments, is its retroactive reach. Unlike traditional laws that only apply to products sold after the start date, the July 2026 mandate applies to devices already in consumers' hands. If you bought a smartphone in 2023, you will be legally entitled to demand a manufacturer repair starting in mid-2026, provided that the parts are still within their mandatory availability window. Manufacturers who built planned obsolescence into their current inventory are now facing a massive logistical liability. To aid consumers in this transition, the EU is introducing the European Repair Information Form. This is a standardized document that repairers must provide, allowing you to compare prices and conditions across different shops with absolute transparency. And to tip the scales further, the law provides a powerful incentive. If you choose to repair a product instead of replacing it while it's still under warranty, you receive an automatic 1-year extension of that legal guarantee. It is a systematic attempt to shift the default human assumption from buying new to maintaining the old. France has already provided a roadmap for this shift with its Repairability Index. Since 2021, every laptop and smartphone sold in France must display a score from 1 to 10 based on how easy it is to disassemble and how long spare parts are available. This simple sticker has fundamentally changed consumer behavior. Shoppers are no longer just looking at megapixels or processing speed. They are looking at the repairability score. France is now evolving this into a durability index, which will force companies to disclose exactly how many years a product is expected to last before it fails. However, even as hardware becomes easier to fix, we are facing a looming crisis in the realm of software-induced obsolescence. This is best illustrated by the ongoing standoff over Windows 10. In October 2025, Microsoft plans to end free security support for Windows 10. While the software will continue to function, the devices will become vulnerable to cyber attacks, rendering them unsafe for professional or personal use. The problem? Roughly 22% of current users depend on hardware that is technically incapable of upgrading to Windows 11 due to specific security chip requirements. This means that in late 2025 and 2026, millions of perfectly functional, high-quality PCs, many manufactured as recently as 2018, will effectively be bricked by policy, not by failure. Consumer advocacy groups like Euroconsumers have characterized this as a deliberate business model of forced replacement. Microsoft recently bowed to pressure, agreeing to extend support for 1 additional year in Europe. But the core issue remains. Software is the tether. If a company can remotely withdraw support, your hardware is merely a vessel for a license they can revoke at will. The Windows 10 case is the ultimate test of the right to repair. If we cannot force a software giant to maintain the security of functional machines, then our hardware ownership is a temporary illusion. We are living in a linear economy that is literally burying the planet. The UN reports that we are now generating 62 billion kilograms of e-waste every year, a toxic mountain that grows by the second, because we are priced out of sustainability. The European response is a refusal to accept this take, make, dispose model. It is a demand for a circular economy, where the value of a product lies in its longevity, not its replacement cycle. But as the July 2026 deadline approaches, the question remains, can a legal directive truly stop a century of planned obsolescence? Or will the industry find new digital locks to keep us in the subscription trap? To find out, we must look at the final chapter of our investigation, the strategy for reclaiming our digital sovereignty and the tools for surviving in a world of smart cages. The Ark of Sovereignty and the Repair of the World. We have spent this series dissecting the hidden engines of our reality, from the biological clock of your 3 billion heartbeats to the algorithmic entropy of the dead internet. But as we reach the end of our journey, all these systems converge on a single vital question. Who actually controls your life? In the era of the tethered economy, where software acts as a digital leash and ownership is being replaced by perpetual licensing,
The answer is increasingly not you. To survive the year 2026 and beyond, we must move past legal battles and toward a state of digital sovereignty. Digital sovereignty is the radical belief that your tools should serve you, and you alone. It is a rejection of the default human assumption that we are merely passive observers of the technology we buy. When you purchase a device, you aren't just buying glass, silicon, and lithium. You are acquiring a piece of your own agency. If a manufacturer can remotely revoke your ability to use that device, as we saw with Ubisoft or the Windows 10 support standoff, they have effectively confiscated a portion of your time and your freedom. But there is a resistance growing in the shadows of the mainstream market. This is the Open Source Ark. As corporations abandon perfectly functional hardware to planned obsolescence, communities of volunteers, hackers, and engineers are building a digital lifeboat. From the developers of the Linux kernel to the volunteers at iFixit, who crowdsourced the world's largest database of medical equipment manuals during the pandemic, these individuals are preserving the blueprints of reality. They understand what the Greeks called tikkun olam, the repair of the world. To repair something is not just a mechanical task. It is a moral refusal to let the physical world be dictated by corporate budgetary cycles. This brings us to the final evolution of our core strategy, Polite Audacity 3.0. In its first form, Polite Audacity was about social boundaries. In its second, it was about refusing the scroll of digital slop. In its final form, it is about becoming economically invisible. The system thrives on the linear economy of take, make, dispose. It earns its profit when you throw away a functionally perfect phone because the screen is cracked or the battery is unpaired by a software lock. To practice Polite Audacity 3.0 is to be unprofitable. It is the choice to buy used, to repair the old, and to value the wabi-sabi, the beauty of the worn and the mended, over the shimmering trap of the new. Every time you replace a battery yourself or install an alternative operating system on a legacy laptop, you are breaking a digital tether. You are signaling to the market that you are no longer a repeat purchase statistic. You are an owner. As we look across the landscape of our 10 stories, a clear pattern emerges. The hidden systems of the world, whether they are biological, astronomical, or digital, are designed to harvest our most precious resource, time. The 1 billion heartbeat law gave us our budget. Enshittification showed us how platforms spend that budget for us. Digital slop showed us how the system rots our ability to even notice it's gone. The right to repair is the final piece of the puzzle, because it is the bridge back to the physical world. It is the realization that in an era of AI hallucinations and dead internet bots, the most authentic thing you can do is hold a screwdriver. Repair is an act of active construction in a world of passive consumption. It forces you to engage with the actual physics of your existence, to understand the nitrogen ghosts of your environment, and to respect the labor that went into making the things you use. We are living through a great dispossession, but the door to the forbidden garden is still unlocked. The laws of the 2026 digital deadline, from the European Union to the states of Oregon and Colorado, are creating a brief window of opportunity, but laws are only as strong as the people who use them. The simulation is thick, and the slop is rising, but your heart is still beating. You have a finite budget of moments. Don't let them be bricked by a remote server. Don't let them be slotted into an algorithmic loop. Pick up the tool, open the case, reclaim the machine, because the only way to truly own your life is to be the only one who has the password to your own soul. The series is complete, the system is revealed, the repair begins now.